What if I told you one of the most popular movies released in the last year wasn't shot on IMAX or anything else? It was shot on a format that we haven't used since the 1950s. One battle after another, this year's Oscar winning Best Picture was shot using VistaVision, something that we haven't used since the 50s that was popularized by Alfred Hitchcock. VistaVision is one of those things that sounds super technical, maybe even a little outdated. It actually solved a massive problem for filmmakers back in the day. And now it honestly might be doing the exact same thing that it did originally. So instead of just giving a definition, I want to break down what it is, why it existed, and why it still matters. Plus, it actually solves a massive problem if you're shooting with film versus it's not really useful for digital, as it was designed only for film formats back in the 1950s. Let's start with the problem. So to understand VistaVision, you have to understand a little bit of the time period and what was going on. VistaVision may have came out of the peak of Hollywood where we really saw the change forming, where really no one was going to theaters anymore. We had theaters in our homes with new TV box sets, and entertainment was at an all-time high. Film grain just became a bit of an eyesore. You can still see it in a lot of the old westerns and things like that that you watch. Some of it does look really rough. Some of it is due to film deterioration, as the actual celluloid in it eventually becomes dead, essentially. And a lot of stuff doesn't really scan too well whenever it goes into a digital format, but most of it just didn't really look that good to start with. So it was here to solve a problem, and solve it did. Of them that they still kind of deal with a little bit today, which is, how do we make movies feel better than what people can watch at home? This is truly the birth of the big screen experience that you know and love today. And one of the biggest ways they were able to do that was the image quality. So in 1954, the brilliant engineers of Paramount Pictures all came together, and thus VistaVision was born into the world. And when you look at it, it's honestly not that crazy. They didn't invent new film. They didn't completely redesign cameras. They even used the standard 35mm stock film footage that you can still buy and use today. However, what they did do is they changed one thing: how the film moves through the camera. So here's how it works. Normally, 35mm film runs vertically through a camera. That's why you'll see the big massive magazines usually on top. They have each frame stacked on top of the next using a really small portion of the film strip itself. Well, what does VistaVision do? Well, VistaVision flips it entirely sideways, so instead of going vertically through the camera, it actually runs horizontally, which means each frame takes up way more space on the film. And that gives you a much larger image area per frame. Now, more image area gives you more details, finer film grain, and a super clean look overall. So by increasing each frame, VistaVision gave filmmakers a much larger area space to work with, honestly. It allowed for a super sharp image to be projected on the screen, and the theaters didn't need to overhaul any of the stuff that they already had. And that's super important because it just wasn't about the quality, it was also about the practicality of it. The studios could shoot for VistaVision, basically compress the image down for the standard projectors, and then you could still keep the high level of detail in every single image and frame. This was so important at the time because some of the other competitors like CinemaScope would introduce new formats that would force theaters to upgrade equipment, or in some cases even change their theater layouts as seats would be in the way of the new projection system, making VistaVision a massive deal at the time. And filmmakers took notice. A lot of them started to use this around the mid-50s to really the early 60s is when it really came in use. One of the most well-known, everyone knows him, Alfred Hitchcock. Hitchcock used VistaVision in films like Vertigo and North by Northwest to get a super clean image and one that he could better control. Which is why if you watch those films back today, they still actually look pretty good considering how old they are. They held up very well thanks to this process. Marlon Brando's only directorial debut came in 1961 with One-Eyed Jacks, and sadly enough, that was one of the last VistaVision films that Paramount actually shot, but that didn't quite mean that the format was dead at that time. It was adopted by some other filmmakers, and there's a few here and there that were shot all the way into the 70s, almost the 80s. But after that, it was kind of just shelved and put away. So you're probably asking yourself the question that I was asking as well. If it is so good and so beneficial, why did we just kind of put it away and forget about it? Well, like most things in film, it all comes down to cost and convenience. VistaVision requires more film per shot, so it does make it actually way more expensive than just shooting with a standard vertical feeded camera. On top of this, to make it even worse, a lot of camera manufacturers never really adopted the format and didn't really change their cameras for it. They just weren't too keen at the time of changing their cameras from a vertical feed system to a horizontal feed system. And over time, other formats emerged with widescreen processes, anamorphic lenses, and then eventually in the near distant future, the rise of digital. Each one solving problems in their own way, of course. So VistaVision never really disappeared because it was bad. It was kind of just outperformed by other formats. We're honestly seeing something very similar with the, I guess, changeover from APS-C cameras to now full frame in the at least consumer market. So it's funny to see that we're having our own little instance where VistaVision's coming, like with full frame you can get, you know, finer detail and much more for every single image. It's just interesting to see how history repeats itself with that. And look, I'm not blowing this out of the water. Just because one single film used it doesn't mean it's entirely back. However, it's not just one single film that has used it. So VistaVision actually made its return with The Brutalist not too long ago, and now we have one battle after another really heightening the example of it is officially now a comeback and it is no longer a gimmick. Recent release this year, Wuthering Heights, has also used this format. As bad as the movie is, from what I've heard, the images I've seen from it do look tremendous. And if that is the case that they did shoot with VistaVision, that is very impressive. The interesting fact that I did hear, there was a podcast recently, I believe it was the cinematographer for The Brutalist was talking about the VistaVision cameras. And most of them have not been updated since, I think, the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I'm not here to say VistaVision is the perfect format for any kind of film. To me, honestly, IMAX is still superior. However, VistaVision actually has a home in today's day and age if it's here to stay. Now more than ever, future generations really love the film look, and they love really the feeling that you get when you watch a proper film. So the clarity and the true character that you can get when shooting with VistaVision it's really just unmatched right now. We can look at some of the popular movies recently that shot with it, such as The Brutalist, One Battle After Another, and then Wuthering Heights are the three latest ones that have used the format. Does this really mean anything going forward? Is it really just like a one-off? Does anyone really care? I think the average person really won't be able to tell that much, as film movies have gotten so good. They are a little bit of a hassle and they are a little bit more expensive to shoot, but the image that comes from them is always just spectacular. But I don't know, there's just always something to an image having some character and not feeling like a cookie cutter commercial nowadays that really just gets someone's eye, and it's just something you can truly appreciate. In a day and age where every single thing feels like it's meant to look and feel the exact same, it's just always nice to have a little bit of character seep through. It really, I don't want to say adds to the immersion, but it really creates a feeling that you can kind of grasp onto while you're consuming anything, really. And sure, good lighting and a pretty decent camera go a long way, but God, there's just something special about film. There truly is. I don't know what it is. Every single time that I watch a movie that is shot with film and that I can usually kind of tell and pick it out, it just feels like it has so much more character and authenticity to it. And it's, I don't know, it just really adds to the experience in my opinion. So anything that can help, hammer that home and really give us more films that are straight up shot on film, I'm always going to be a big fan of that. So yeah, that's VistaVision. It may sound like a super old school idea, but in reality, it's one of the more interesting formats that kind of shaped the way cinema is today in a very strange way. It's proof that filmmaking never really reinvents itself. It almost sort of evolves, and whatever is considered a dead format in film is never truly dead. It's always just put to the shelf until someone else comes along who knows what they're doing a little bit better, and then they can master it even that much more. But yeah, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know if you've ever even heard of VistaVision. I'm curious to see what your experience is. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.